Classic TV and movie fans, Rick 9G here. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be talking about the Rob Zombie Munsters movie. Now I'm going to be breaking it down. I'm going to show you really fun things like Easter eggs, hidden things that you probably missed and did not see when you saw the movie. These are really fun facts and interesting things about the movie. I'm also going to dissect it, tell you why I thought it was good, maybe things that weren't so good. So it's going to be a review. They're definitely going to be spoilers, so if you don't want the movie or the story to be spoiled, you should not watch this video. You should wait. If you don't care, then you can definitely watch it if you have seen it. So yeah, it's just a free way for me to be able to talk about it. So don't say I didn't give you a warning. Again, I'm going to go into it. It's going to be as long as it needs to be. I'm not going to talk about every scene in the movie, but I'm going to talk and go through the movie. I may miss or may not get to a scene that you talked about, but again, I'm trying to show you the fun facts or interesting references to other Universal Pictures and productions that I think you'll find absolutely fascinating. So let's get right to it. Again, if you enjoy this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Now we should begin here with the Universal logo. The Universal Picture logo that you see here was used in very classic movies. A lot of the original classic horror films like Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman, and so forth. This is what they used, and throughout the years that has evolved over time. So Rob Zombie is harking back to the era of the golden era of Hollywood at Universal. Now, if you notice, the movie begins in a graveyard. Now, this is no accident. Rob Zombie knows his classic horror, going back to Frankenstein. This is how the movie begins. It begins in a very similar type graveyard where we see Dr. Frankenstein is picking different human bodies apart to get the brain, to get the legs, the arms, and so forth. That's exactly what the beginning of this movie is, with his assistant, Floop. And it's great to see this. It is, again, important because Herman Munster is the Frankenstein monster, and so it's a perfect parallel. Now, this is Richard Brake. He is playing Dr. Augustus Wolfgang, and he's the creator of Herman throughout the story. Now, this isn't exactly parallel to what is happening in the series, the television series, so it's changed a little bit. Again, this movie was, Rob Zombie didn't say it was going to be an exact fit to the series, but it is pretty faithful overall if you look at the movie. Now they're going down into the catacombs. You see Dr. Augustus Wolfgang along with Floop, and they're just hunting. Now this scary part, I mean, to me it feels scary. This is Transylvania. Now this zombie that does come to them is really interesting because it's unexpected. There's nothing really that we see that I can at least think of in the series, the actual Munster series, but it is cool because this is where we finally see the logo and the intro that yes, this movie is the Munsters. I mean, it's kind of unusual. I would have thought the Munsters logo would have been on top of Herman Munster or something like that, Lily, Grandpa, the Count, whoever that may be, but no, it's on top of this zombie. We get to know who he is and so forth, but it's just really interesting. Seeing Floop there with Dr. Wolfgang, it's just very interesting because, again, they're picking up these body parts, and we're a few minutes into the movie, we see none of the original characters. Some people I know may be turned off by this, but I kind of liked it because it added another layer, another dimension to the world of Transylvania and the Munsters that we didn't really know about. And so it's great. It adds the comedic flair, and it explains where we see Herman's fingers and where those things were acquired from. And this is great. We see Richard Brake and Jorge Garcia, the actors, talking with the zombie character. Now, a lot of these very minor roles were filled in by people from Hungary or Hungarian actors that are relatively not well known at all. And so I think it was a way to cost save, but it was also, I mean, they were there because this was filmed in Hungary, right? And so in Budapest. And so it's great to know that he did that. He saved a little bit of money using these actors. Now we start with this scene here, and this is where we see Grandpa. Now what's great about this, I call him Grandpa. I know a lot of you may say, oh no, he's the Count in this movie. I know, but we know him as Grandpa. So if you hear me say Grandpa, let's not go crazy over that, okay? That's very important. Again, this is the Count Dracula, technically. He's known on the show as Grandpa. I know there's no Eddie Munster, but to me, those terms are interchangeable. We know who I'm talking about, so there's no need in the comments to correct me for that. Again, the easy way that I'm doing this, just to make it simpler for me, is I'm advancing through because I can't show you, I could show you images, but I can't show you the actual video of this. So I want to show Grandpa here. Now, a lot of these characters, like Grandpa, if you notice, when you see Lily, when you see Herman, they all show up. Our intro to them is in a scary pose, like him rising out of the actual grave. And that's on purpose. That harkens back to old Hollywood and the classic horror genre. But then it gets comedic. Like here, Grandpa rises up out of the grave, kind of like he levitates. And all of a sudden he says, ooh, ooh, my back, my back. And then same thing with Lily. She comes in almost floating, and then she goes into that comedic role where she is dating Mr. Warlock. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. I don't know about you, and I was a big proponent of, hey, this needs to be done in black and white. A lot of you talked about that. Now, you could tune your TV to make it black and white, but Rob revealed that production Universal didn't let him film it in black and white. It was just not allowed. So I think he took the reverse course. He used colors on purpose, and I mean, look how beautiful this is shot. I mean, look how beautiful the reds are. Look how beautiful the blues are on his face. The cobwebs. It's a nice looking shot. Like, it isn't ugly. It's very symmetrical. The lights, it's just very well lit. And again, we see more of Grandpa the Count here, as well as later on, we see him in his house with all the greens and stuff. Some people, again, were turned off by that. For me, it just blended into the movie. It didn't bother me really, and it was... I kind of forgot about it as we got more into it. Now we have Igor. Now, I want to talk about him a little bit, played by Sylvester McCoy. He is one of the Doctor Who's, right? Now, what's great about Mr. McCoy on the right here is that he plays Igor, and if you know the series, Igor is a bat. Now, again, spoilers here, right? I'm revealing everything here. I'm not holding anything back. But why does Rob Zombie use him as a man, right? If this is like a prequel type thing and then he's a bat later, did he make a mistake? Well, later on you will see, and I will talk about it, there's a potion and a spell that they have to agree to, Grandpa agrees to, or the Count, to make Igor a bat, and that's because they go to LA. So there's a reason, right? And so how we end this movie is we go into the series as Igor as a bat now. And so it makes sense. It gives an explanation to why it's not just a pet bat. It was a person before, right? That was turned into a bat with a spell. So it's like, it all makes sense, and I like how Rob thought about that. It wasn't just a throwaway thing. Now, if there wasn't a connection there, it would kind of bother me, because it would be like, well, this doesn't make sense, right? But I just wanted to point that out. Now, here's what I mean with the introduction of Lily. She comes in floating in this position from farther away from us to toward us, and kind of like she's frozen, but her body's moving in that kind of phase. And so, again, that harkens back to old Universal, essentially. And then her date starts, right, with this guy, Mr. Warlock. Now, I was puzzled. I was like, wait, who's this guy played by? Well, this is Richard Brake. Yeah, the same guy who plays Dr. Augustus Wolfgang, the doctor who basically makes the creator of Herman Munster. It's the same guy with a lot of prosthetics and makeup. And if you notice, his voice as Dr. Wolfgang is like really like sinister, deep, and like this. And his Orlok, he's like, well, yes. It's really different. It's really cool to see that this is the same guy. And you may say, well, he did that to save money, Rob Zombie. Yeah. But I mean, this guy's talented. I've never seen him before in any other production. I know he's in other Rob Zombie movies, but I was impressed by how he handled this role. And the fact that he was pretty funny playing these ditzy Mr. Warlock, who apparently had money, but he was kind of idiotic, you know. It was just, but in a funny way, in a funny comedic way. I mean, right? He's like a shy Nosferatu character with Lily, and you understand they're going on this date, right? And what I really enjoy is when they go to that restaurant and they're met by this Egyptian pharaoh waiter. Again, he's played by an unknown, right, non-American actor. But it's really cool because as they're in the restaurant, right, they're just eating there, and look, everything, all the waiters are mummies, right? And everyone sitting down is right, they're all monsters, and they're all like dressed differently. And I mean, the elaborate sets, even in the back with the green and the gold. Like, I was, again, looking at this, look at even the hieroglyphics that are up on the wall there, right? As they're bringing the food and you know, Warlock, which is kind of gross, but what he's eating, and look, the Egyptian little things on the table. Look how ornate his chair is. Look how ornate the costuming is behind on the waiter that's blurred. What I mean is they did put a lot of thought into this. I'm just fast forwarding through this because I'm kind of showing you highlights of this, but I really wanted to just show the care that went into this, right? Feed me baby, right? On his little thing here, or feed the baby, sorry. And then he's showing his rats, right? And again, this is Nosferatu. It's going back to the original Dracula look character, right? That we all know about. And then finally we see Lester. We see Lester, who is the brother of Lily, played by Thomas Boykin. He does pretty well throughout the movie. There's a lot of range. In one scene he's drunk and so forth. And I do want to add that all the main actors, Jeff Daniel Phillips, who played Herman, Sherry Moon Zombie played Lily, Dan Rovak played the Count, they all played 3 characters, or essentially at least 2 characters in the movie. And I'll reveal who all of them are in just a little bit as they come up. So you're going to be impressed. That's really cool. And that's some of the stuff that was hidden and you didn't notice. Like Richard Brake, I didn't know he was Mr. Warlock until I looked deep into this. So I hope that was very interesting for you. Now, it's not an accident, but Lester does start out in the woods. That's really important because that's where the Wolfman starts out when we first see him. He's in the woods, right? The Lon Chaney film, The Wolfman. And so that's really, really cool that they have that link there. And we have Zora Krupp here, who's essentially the villain of the movie. She does pretty well. She's pretty sinister in this one. A lot more of Thomas Boykin. Again, I think he did pretty well with his role. I kind of wish we would have seen a little bit more of him in another capacity. I don't know, like I liked him. I wish he would have been used more. He was kind of a, you know, like that type character who's trying to gyp everyone of their money and so forth. I wouldn't want to see him in a more familial capacity, like enjoying time with the family. Just want to note this, there are a lot of scenes like this where people are talking on the phone and there's a lightning bolt in between. Like in this case, we have the Count talking with his son Lester. He is Lily's older brother. And so it's good that look how green, right, the Count is in his castle, and then Lester. So the colors were thought out, and I think overall it looks pretty good. Okay, now this is a topic I want to talk about. Mr. Warlock and Lily are going out a night in the town, right, of Transylvania. Look, live dead girls. Right, we know, again, it's a comedic movie. Raunchy Raven on the left, right, Java Jive. We even see like a casket on top or a coffin with like a Dracula in there, right? And so we know what this is. But again, there's an old style look of the wooden items and the stone cobble, right, which harkens back to old Frankenstein and so forth. But the neon takes it out of whack. Like, it's a joke. It's funny. And I know that some people say they didn't get it, but like, that's the joke, right? That there would be neon in this old-timey look. And so I like that. It's a very funny look. It's like going back to Tim Burton and his Batman, right? Or making it cartoonish yet comical at the same time. Here's more of that, where you can just see like light bulbs. Like, of course this is ridiculous, but that's part of the fun, right? I think that's what makes it interesting. Cafes and bars. And again, Richard Brake here playing Warlock. Look, funeral, no parking, right? Because you're supposed to leave the space open. The pool hall with the skulls. Again, they're all little jokes. And it took time to make all these signs and things. So I think it was really cool that he did this. We didn't see a lot of this in the trailer of the jokes. If the tombs are rocking, don't come a knocking. I mean, come on. That's just like cheesy jokes and him playing a little song and tune for Lily. Now, this is great. It's the first reference that we actually get of a Universal picture, Abbott and Costello, right, with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And so it's a movie that I've seen and I really love. And it's really cool. It's really cool that we're able to see it here. Before we get to her, there's something I do want to show you, though. Look at that, Abbott and Costello. Again, they could use this on the TV. No copyright issue because this is a Universal film. And that's what this Munsters movie is. Okay, now I know some of you are going to be shocked. I was kind of shocked. Maybe some of you this is obvious, but no. So I mentioned that a lot of you may not have known that a lot of the main actors played multiple characters. This is Donna Doomley. Who is she played by? This is Sherry Moon Zombie, the lady who played Lily. Yep, Rob Zombie's wife. She is so good here. I mean, she is making a silly face. Oh, and by the way, over here, this is Jeff Daniel Phillips. This guy played Herman Munster. So he played Shecky Von Wraithbone. This is Lily Munster, essentially, right? Or this is Sherry Moon Zombie. We see the Count, Grandpa. And this is another actor here, but they're supposed to be brothers. But I mean, look at her. I mean, yeah, she's blonde and stuff, but there's no resemblance to me. Like, that doesn't scream Sherry Moon Zombie, at least to me. It's just not obvious. I think Lily herself looks more like Sherry Moon Zombie than Donna Doomley, right? And so, I don't know. I think that's just really interesting. And more of the neon stuff, again, for me, it just worked because it's this comedic tone, and overall, it just worked for me. I don't know about you. Again, you could say I'm wrong or not. This is Richard Brake here playing Dr. Wolfgang. But look at this woman here. Does she not look like Yvonne DiCarlo? A little bit. She's in the movie for like a split second. I don't know if that's like an Easter egg or not, but I'm going to point it to you. To me, she really does look like Yvonne DiCarlo. Jumping around here before Lily tells her sob story of her dating life going horribly wrong. Look at this. Boris Karloff as the mummy. Music for the Miserable. So again, another reference to another Universal classic, The Mummy. And again, this is with Lily Munster. I'm not going to go into this too much, but this is essentially the creation of Herman Munster. I think people could criticize this and be like, well, it could have been done better in terms of some of the effects or some of the background. I think it was okay. It was fine, because as Lily is reminiscing that she wants a good husband and so forth, they're creating Herman, right? Or they're bringing him back to life. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the shot. It's very busy, but it looks like it could be a lab, right? So it works. So for me, this isn't too crazy. It doesn't look cheap to me. Even you can see some of the gray hairs in Jorge Garcia, the beard, right? To me, everything looks right. What's a little strange is the naming of Herman Munster, right? He just talks about how his pet was Herman, and then Munster is the cheese that he has in his actual sandwich. So, I mean, it works. Again, it's cheesy, quote unquote. So I guess that works in a double joke kind of way. I mean, look at this shot right after the creation of Herman, or the coming to life of Herman. I mean, it's beautiful, right? I mean, the water, the bridge, the castle in the background, the lighting, the fog. It's pretty awesome. And let me tell you, I appreciate the film more watching it a second time, so I would definitely recommend it. If you're, again, a big Munsters fan and maybe want to understand this, I think people are jumping a little bit too harsh on Rob Zombie and the actual film, whether it was going to be good or not. I appreciate it a lot more than I'm studying it, to be honest with you. Now, the Count and Lily are watching Good Morning Transylvania. This is the guy who plays Grandpa. This is Daniel Roebuck as another character. He is playing, I actually wrote it down here, Ezra Moser? Yeah, the Ezra, Mr. Ezra. He is the same guy with makeup. So he's playing multiple characters. Not only does he play the Count, but he plays this guy where he's talking basically with Dr. Wolfgang, and so he's watching himself, right? And that's pretty cool that you were able to see McCoy here as well, like serving them lunch and so forth. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about dinner in just a little bit. Our first chance of looking at Jeff Daniel Phillips, I think he did a pretty good job. I felt I was a little harsh on him in just seeing the intro. I think as he got more into the character, maybe practice it a little more, I saw a lot of Herman in him come out, and it was pretty good. Like, I was pretty happy with just seeing him in the bandages and so forth, and I felt like he kind of embodied Herman. The voice is different, but that kind of blended into the background. Like, I didn't care as I started watching it more. Now, looking at Jeff Daniel Phillips with Floop, let me tell you, if you've ever seen the Munsters TV show, you have seen Herman do this exact pose. I'm talking exact. And when he did it, it almost burned into my retinas of, oh my gosh, he is doing a perfect Herman. Like, go back to the series, I'm not even kidding, where someone's talking to Herman who's shorter, and Herman slumps down like this and looks off into the distance at an angle. I mean, just like this. And I was so impressed, because I was like, wow, this does embody Herman Munster. Like, I was doubting it, but I see it here now. I really do see it. And this look of bewilderment that is also seen so many times given by Fred Gwynne. Again, I'm not here saying that Jeff Daniel Phillips did a better job than Fred Gwynne. No, I am not saying that. I'm saying he's embodying, Jeff Daniel Phillips is embodying the performance of Fred Gwynne and who Herman Munster is. It's not something out of left field. It's familiar to me, and it should be familiar to all of you fans. Okay, now this shot I really like. I like the color, but I just noticed that this is an actual face, right? Like the eyes here, the ears, right? The mouth with the teeth, and the mouth is open and you go in. That's really cool. Like, I wonder how, because this is a practical. This isn't CGI. This is CGI back here. And this is almost like Christmassy. And I don't know, like, it doesn't bother me. I think it's pretty good. It works. Look, even a little baby, like a rocking baby thing, right, with a little parasol. Like, I just like the detail, like a burning trash can, right, the face there. There's just so much detail in this that I never realized until I saw it a second time. Now, the robot here was in the series, and whenever you hear the robot saying something, this is Butch Patrick, right? Actual Eddie Munster from the original series doing the voice. He's not inside. He's not inside. They have another actor who is Hungarian, I believe. But yeah, Butch Patrick is not inside. He's just providing the voice. Now, in the scene where we see Herman singing and Lily go and visit him, I don't know how many of you noticed this, but look, Warlock is here, which is really cool, and he has another date. Because he said he dates like all the time, and so I thought that was kind of funny. Like, again, it's not obvious. They're not pointing it out, right? Herman and his band, but he's there, and even Lester shows up, and they have a conversation. But I think that was really cool. Now, this scene I really like. Jeff Nano Phillips, he won me over with this scene. Like, his charm here, I really like his charm. I really like his mannerisms and how he talks to Lily, that he goes back in and goes goody goody goody, like he's happy, and then he comes back out because he likes her and he's acting all suave here. His glasses, like, I like it. It just worked for me. Look at this, like, he looks like Fred Gwynn here. Like, look at it. He looks like Fred Gwynn. I think this is amazing. Now, this scene is where they agree to go on the date, right? And we see Herman Munster, he's buying blood, and he's taking the lilies for Lily, right? Because, I mean, it's Herman, he's bumbling and stuff, and of course he's going to take lilies to Lily. But he's going to buy blood, and you're like, that's kind of weird. I even thought that's kind of weird, but then I thought about it, what he's doing with it, and he tells a little joke here about the blood, how it's expensive. But he goes to the castle, right? And he talks, little grandpa, there's joking. Grandpa, or Count, is able to teleport. He teleports right down. And as they go in, he gives him the O negative blood. And, right, he's a vampire. Vampires drink blood. He gave him that gift. And now when we go to the dinner scene, again, it's not referenced, but it's there, right? And what do we see the Count doing? Okay, the Count is slurping. And look at this. The Coke bottle here with red residue. Again, it's a kid's film, but he's a straw, right, with the straw, and he's drinking the O negative blood. I mean, what else would he be drinking? That's what he gave him, right? So I think that's a cool touch. We actually see a vampire in this movie drinking blood without it being overt. He's not biting a neck, but again, it's just smart. How many of you caught this? Let me know in the comments. Now, this scene where Lily and Herman are in the graveyard, you can see that this is a statue of Lily over here, but you may miss the one behind Herman, which is actually a statue of the Count. So there it is right here. This is the Count, Grandpa, right? And he has a statue of himself. It's a headstone, because later on we see Lily, and then she mentions that the other one that we see is one of her headstones. And he said, wow, that's so cool. Now we see Uncle Gilbert, who was in the series. And here, of course, it's her Uncle Gilbert, and they're meeting, and it's kind of like a way that the family is being introduced to Herman. Look at here. There's even a beer here. Uncle Gilbert is drinking beer, so that's kind of funny, a little reference here. But again, he is the creature from the Black Lagoon, and that is a Universal property, and we do get to see that in here, and that's really cool when they go and they actually watch movies with Uncle Gilbert. And you see the intro here, and they go, look, they're eating seaweed. Everyone's eating seaweed, and they're watching Creature from the Black Lagoon. Look, you have posters here. Creature Walks Among Us, the other films, and so it's really cool. Again, Rob is paying tribute to Universal classics that you probably love, that I love. I don't know how many of you caught this. That's one of the reasons why I liked it, because it's not just the Munsters. It pays tribute to everything that is Universal and all of the things that we like. And so to me, that elevated the movie. That made it better because it added more for me. It added more enjoyment, more trivia, more Easter eggs. Another reference that we see here is Leave It to Beaver. pretty cool that we're able to see this here on the show because Leave It to Beaver was a Universal production. It was actually filmed right next to the original Munsters Mansion. This Munsters Mansion is different and in Budapest, Hungary, but at Universal Studios, they had that here. So it's, again, a lot of references going back to the original Universal pictures and TV shows. And I do like seeing Grandpa doing spells here. Again, we do see that in the original series. But remember, some of the spells work in the series and some don't. And part of the fun of the original series was when his spells didn't work. And you get to see that here, him doing that and trying to build, I don't know, a little husband, a good husband for Lily. And out comes like a chimp because he messes it up and so forth. And again, it's comedic relief. It's funny. It works. I mean, look at that. Tomb, sweet tomb. It's, again, it's just perfect. Now look at the costuming here on the Count. I mean, all black, white tie. There's a lot of costume changes here. So I don't know where people are saying the costumes look cheap. He has tons of costumes. I mean, look at the gloves. Those are leather gloves there. And just like all the scribbling and the writing, that takes time to do. There's even red colors and white lettering, different crosses and different things on the actual robe that he's wearing. And so again, I'm calling attention to all these details that you may not have noticed in first watching. Now we know when this is the clincher part of the movie where Herman essentially signs over the Count's castle to Zora Krupp. I don't know where that would even legally be possible, right? He will be Lily's husband, but he's not yet. So, you know, it may be me picking at straws, but I mean, like, again, it works for the story. I get it. But I don't even know how legally binding that would be. Like, I don't know why he would he own the castle, Herman, because he's getting married to Lily? Because Lily didn't own the castle. The Count did. And so it wasn't hers until he passed away. Or so, does that make sense? So I don't know why that would work or if this plot is weak or not. Maybe I look too much into it, but I'm trying to make sense of it. And I don't know. I just glanced it over and say, okay, Herman just signed over the castle, and that's why they became poor and they had to leave and so forth. So it kind of made sense to me in a very non-strict way. I mean, look at this. The lighting, the spider webs, and just the red and even the blue bat wings. I think it just looks gorgeous. Not saying much about the wedding. I think it was pretty good. Some comedic relief here and there. And Dr. Wolfgang, essentially his last scene, like he's done with Herman now. And we see the robot behind marrying them, right? The voice of Butch Patrick here. But I want to get to the Paris scenes because there's a lot to talk about there. So obviously this was filmed in Hungary, right? In Budapest. And so they just have Paris and they have this, right? And they're not really in Paris and they're like scenes going on in the background. Some people didn't like this, but let me tell you something. I Love Lucy had a scene where Lucy went to Paris and they did the same thing in the 50s. So if people say it's like cheap or whatever, no one says that about I Love Lucy. So people aren't, right, being fair to this movie in that sense. If you think I Love Lucy was fair for doing that in the 50s, this is harking back to that. The only one I really didn't like is later on when they do it to LA. That just seems a little cheap. This to me is a little different because this is just giving you the idea that's in Paris, but then look, here's Paris, right? So they're actually walking around, they're talking, but they don't do that in LA. They're just like at Mockingbird Heights somewhere. Now what's really cool here is that they go to this little Parisian area. By the way, this is Dan Roebuck again, playing another character. It's a little cameo or a little appearance that we don't get clued in about. So this is Grandpa Munster, essentially. But he's playing a third character, a bystander or a Parisian tourist. There he is. He's fleeing the scene because they're all scared of Herman and Lily, how ghostly, ghoulish they look while everyone else is quote-unquote normal. And then we see where they get spot. They have this newspaper article that tells them that there's like an animal run loose, right, in the sewers of France. And we see them stumbling. It takes a little bit of time for them to get there. But you can see Herman, and this is our first look at Spot, like a baby Spot. And it's really cool. It's really cool to be able to see it here, and I'm glad that Rob put it in his movie. Again, this movie keeps getting unnecessary flack in my mind. It's not a perfect film. I'm not like a crazy obsessed, well, I can be sometimes. No, but I mean, like, I don't think that this film is perfect or that's the best film of all time, but people are unnecessarily hating on it. They were like, oh, Playgirl, it's so disrespectful. It's like Playboy and it's supposed to be a family film. I'm like, hello, people. It was in the original series. If you're really a big fan, you would know that and not just trash the movie. If you don't like the movie, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But people are not holding the double standard, right? Or the double standard for the fact that it was on the show. Why couldn't it be in the movie and it's like 40 years later? I mean, they should have some respect for that and the fact that, this is an homage to the series. So it's not disrespectful at all. In fact, it was more scandalous back in the 60s than it is in 2022. Herman and Lily are on their honeymoon, and we see the Woody Woodpecker again. The Woody Woodpecker character would be seen at Universal because it was a Universal product, and so it's good to see it here. Again, more hearkening to Universal. You could say that he's pushing the Universal product, but if at all, it's anything, it's putting you into the world of what they would be looking at, right? Because this is the world of the Munsters. It's Universal. And this is Spot. We get to see him in the tub. They keep him in the tub. They name him Spot because obviously he has spots. You see his horns, and you see him as a little baby. We saw him as an adult in essentially the series, and here's a baby. It's so cool. Look at Spot. Aww. Now, Zombo was played by Jeff Daniel Phillips, the same man who played Herman Munster, and Zombo was in the original series. So again, so far we see, I have a list here of who played everyone in case you want to know. Jeff Daniel Phillips played Herman, Shecky Von Rathbone, and Zombo. Sherry Moon Zombie played Lily and Donna Doomley. Roebuck played the Count, Ezra Mosher, and the man at the Paris table. And we have, who else? Richard Brake, who played Dr. Wolfgang, as well as Mr. Warlock. Very, very cool. Now, this is a very quick scene. It's seen for about less than a second. And what I really liked about it was that you could see the Count playing checkers, and he moves the pieces telepathically. He can also do that in the series. So again, it's not saying, look at me, move the pieces telepathically. You have to pick up on it when you watch it. So it's really, really cool. Now, I really like this because Sylvester McCoy is taking the potion to make his character Igor turn into a bat because Herman doesn't want to take him around. So he goes to LA or Hollywood as a bat. And again, it leads into what the series is, right? Where the series says that Igor is the bat. So it gives an explanation of why he's hanging around the house and who he really is and so forth. So I love that background. And little Easter eggs like this, I don't know how many of you caught this. Count Warlock, who Lily went on a date with in the beginning of the movie, played by Richard Brake, eaten by horde of rats. I think that's hilarious because that was his pet, right? I mean, he had tons of pet rats, and he said they were his favorite, and I just think it was so funny that the story says that he got eaten by rats. Love it. Of course, we knew that Elvira herself, Cassandra Peterson, would be in the movie, playing basically the real estate agent in the movie here, trying to get them their home, trying to sell them a nice home, quote unquote. But when they get there, they find out that the Munsters actually want the Munsters mansion that we all know about. So they travel back on the plane, Transylvania Airlines Flight 666. If you hear a woman talking in on the plane intercom and saying Flight 666, blah, 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 that's actually Pat Priest herself, Marilyn Munster. She is the voiceover for that. She doesn't say it many times. She says it right in the beginning when we see the plane, and then right at the end when they're deboarding right now, and Flight 666. That's where you hear her say it, like around this time. Also, you see this is really the control tower of Los Angeles, but they're not in Los Angeles. This is some CGI, just background work to make it look like they were in Los Angeles to make the movie work. Cassandra Peterson ready for the, she's actually ready for the costume party, and she faints, right? They fix up where she faints. They made it a little better. Made it just a little bit more palpable for her ears. So it wasn't super cheesy, but just cheesy enough. And this is the stuff that I really didn't like when they were quote unquote in LA and they're taking photos and it was black and white. I don't know. It was just drawings in the background. It was black and white like the series, yeah. It was just a little too cheap for me. It's just these are the scenes that didn't work for me. Like that, I don't know. They could have driven around LA. I mean, maybe. Like, even side streets of LA, like even small streets with like no one on there just kind of look like LA. I don't know, but this was easier, but I didn't like it as much. This is, of course, now in Budapest, Hungary, the little, neighborhood that they created with the homes and stuff. So that worked a little better. And them seeing, of course, the monsters and thinking that everything is normal here. Then finally, when we do see the Munsters mansion, we do get to see and go inside, and you can see Spot's tail right here, which is great when you see it kind of retreats into. You can see the tail there as it continues on, and it's just really, really cool. You can kind of see it moving. I can't really show it to you moving, but it's really cool to be able to see his tail, and it retreats back behind. So then Herman does get talked to by Mr. Gateman, Mr. Goodberry, and Mr. Graves, who run the funeral home, and they offer him a job to move the bodies that are too heavy. And that's great because that's what he had in the original series. So he was a star, like a Hollywood musician in the beginning of this movie, and then he lost his job, like they lost him, basically the Count's castle, and then now they moved over here, and then he worked in a funeral home, which is what happens in the original series. So that's really cool how they kind of tied it together and made it work. It explains how that happened. And look at this little business card, Gateman, Goodberry, and Graves. I love it. They go back to the home, and we finally get to see them a little bit more inside the mansion, and we hear Herman say, darn, darn, darn. Not like he does in the series, a little different. Look at Spot in Lily and Herman's bed. I think that's a pretty good touch there. And Herman in his pajamas, which we do see in the original series. And we even get to see the Raven, nevermore, in the clock. And I think that's great. Again, harkening back to Mel Blanc, who used to do the voice, Bugs Bunny himself used to do the voice of the Raven. And that's so cool. And I mean, the shot of Herman outside in front of the mansion is just great. They see the humans, right? 1313 Mockingbird Lane. They see the humans, they freak out. Essentially, the movie ends here, where, they see the kids and they freak out because they look strange, and they say, well, I guess we got to get used to the neighborhood. It's not going to be that bad, right? And then as they continue on, we see Uncle Lester coming and giving them a cut of the profits that he made by going to Vegas and gambling. And they're rich, and the movie ends. And again, that's a little puzzling because in the series, they're not really rich. I love this shot, the final shot, because they're not rich in the series, right? And so the idea here is that they're rich here, but not in the series. So did they lose the money with Eddie, or maybe when Marilyn came or something happened? Maybe there's a part 2 and it explains what happens to that money. Because again, they're hardworking folk in the series. So I hope you enjoyed this. Again, to me, the scene itself where we see everyone together right here, the 4 of them, and the Munsters mansion is just perfect. I absolutely love it. I want to know your thoughts on this. What did you think of the movie? Did you appreciate maybe a little more with all these little things? I mean, work definitely went into this movie. I think it got a 5.8 out of 10 overall, which isn't too great. I gave it a 6. So it's 5.8 out of 10, 6 out of 10. It's kind of the same, similar range. Again, I want to know your thoughts, if you liked it, if you didn't. And I know plenty of people didn't. But again, maybe this will make you appreciate it more. Let me know your thoughts down below. Did you catch any of these things? Did you learn something? I'd love to see it in the comments below. We'll see you all next time. Thank you for your support. And most importantly, be hopeful. Thank you so much to everyone who supports my work on Patreon. David D, Sally N, Gerard D, Greg S, Ricky, Citizen Kane 359, Kevin K, and Vito L. If you want to appear on this list, don't forget to look at the Patreon description in the link below. Thank you.